Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. It's time for Soccer Morning on a Friday. Soccer Morning on a Friday. I don't know why I'm saying it twice, because it feels good to do so. Soccer Morning on a Friday 3 times. WorldSoccerTalk.com. Thank you very much for joining us. Big show for you today. Of course, we have a big weekend of matches coming up around the world. One of the biggest and best and brightest leagues in the world is the Barclays. Barclays still, right? Until next year. Then it's not Barclays anymore. Barclays Premier League. That's coming up. We've actually got a game today. And Luke Moore from the world-famous Football Ramble will join us to talk about all of the storylines swirling around the top division in England, including all of this nonsense coming out of Chelsea. Jose Mourinho just tops himself over and over and over and over and over. And he's doing so again. And we'll get into some of that. So Luke Moore, that's coming up at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Set your Soccer Morning watches. Get ready for that. Should be a good discussion. Prior to Luke Moore arriving on the show at 9:30, we will have the phone lines open. Plenty of time for you to jump in and talk to me about whatever's on your mind. First, though, we have to do headlines. Let's start in MLS. Last night, Thursday night action, a very rare Thursday night game. New York City FC beat DC United 3-1 at Yankee Stadium. Goals from Tommy McNamara, David Villa, Kwadwo Poku. First assist in MLS for Andrea Pirlo on that David Villa goal, which proved to be the game winner. Solid performance by NYCFC, and that, especially in that second half. They did have a turnover that led to DC United taking the lead through Alvaro Saborio. You thought, oh no, here we go again. This is the way DC United wins their games. They just take advantage of your mistakes. Meanwhile, NYCFC was having some trouble with their tactics and their strategic integrity heading into the match. They sorted some things out. Now, how much of that was related to Frank Lampard being injured and not available, we don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what the balance of that midfield looks like moving forward if and when Frank Lampard is 100%, and maybe he wink won't be for the rest of the season. Real Salt Lake has completed the signing of a designated player, 29-year-old Argentine Juan Manuel Martinez, formerly of Boca Juniors, also once played for Corinthians in Brazil. He is a striker, and he will join the team in place of Alvaro Saborio. The player's name is the player's nickname is El Burrito, which you may have heard previously. I'm not exactly sure the genesis of El Burrito, but I'm being told it's not the food, it's the animal. It's a small donkey, right? That's what a burrito actually means, right? Small donkey. So RSL gets themselves a striker. Whilst the Wall Street Journal is reporting that FIFA and their internal investigation, the latest internal investigation, the lawyers involved in that investigation, which are U.S.-based, have told FIFA executives that they must cooperate with the investigation or risk expulsion. There's some pretty heavy quotes here. Top soccer officials also have been told that failure to cooperate could expose them to increased scrutiny from U.S. authorities working on a criminal probe of FIFA members. This all seems to be maybe cover your butt territory a little bit, but it certainly is FIFA taking steps to weed out some of the criminal element that may be sucked up into the Department of Justice FBI investigation, maybe to better protect the organization. Or you can imagine that this isn't much, this is probably a bunch of bluster because it's FIFA and that's what they do. The Washington, D.C. firm that has been hired by FIFA, which is Quinn, Emanuel, Urquhart, and Sullivan, plan to take unprecedented measures to compel testimony from dozens of current and former top officials and seize documents and electronic records that go back more than a decade. So we'll be looking out for that. I mentioned the Chelsea nonsense. Jose Mourinho held a press conference today in which he addressed the ongoing controversy over his criticism of team doctor Eva Carneiro. Of course, she was criticized for coming onto the field along with another team, a team physio, to treat Eden Hazard during Chelsea's draw last weekend to open up the Premier League season. Jose sort of danced around this topic, said he did not want to really discuss it, saying it's my decision. I have 7 assistants, only 4 can go to the bench. saying that Conero will be demoted and will not be on the bench at the Etihad for their next match against Manchester City this weekend. It's a whole lot of nothing, but it is Jose Mourinho being Jose Mourinho, perhaps maybe stepping outside his bounds. The Premier League Doctors Association, which yes is a thing, has criticized Mourinho for his decision to demote Conero, et cetera, et cetera. Sources say former Swansea manager Michael Laudrup, Danish legend, is the latest name to be added to the L3 candidate list. The Mexico national team manager position still vacant as they look for a replacement for Miguel Herrera. Laudrup does speak fluent Spanish. He has coached in Spain. He has expressed some interest to coach in the Americas. He last coached in Qatar. This is after he left Swansea. Several other names have been tied to the Mexico national team job, including Marcelo Bielsa, Jorge Sampaoli, Caixinha, who's coaching in Mexico. All three of them have reportedly declined the offer. Ricardo Lavolpe, former Mexico national team manager, has put his name out there. He is certainly a candidate. Bunch of matches today. Bunch of matches coming up this weekend. We'll get into those later maybe, but today, Bayern Munich, Hamburg, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. That is the open of the Bundesliga season, and if you want to see it, you can for free on YouTube, whether you have Fox. Is that also being simulcast on one of the Foxes, Trevor? Whether you have the Foxes or not, the Fox Sports is. You can watch Bayern and Hamburg on YouTube for free. Go find that somewhere. In the French League, Monaco and Lille, that's a 2:30 p.m. kickoff as well. Aston Villa, Manchester United is the Premier League game today at 2:45. The Spanish Super Cup going off with Athletic Bilbao and Barcelona. That's a 4 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Pedro included in the team for Barcelona with rumors swirling around his departure. And then tonight, MLS action, San Jose Earthquakes, Colorado Rapids. That one will get you all kinds of worked up. That happens at 11 p.m. Eastern time. That Bundesliga match is on FS2 as well as YouTube, so there you go. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will open up the phone lines ahead of Luke Moore. It's your turn to talk to me on a Friday. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Face in the crowd, you're talking too loud, but I can't hear you calling.
This Sunday, I'll be calling the Philadelphia Union against Chicago Fire game on Rabble.tv. I'd like to invite you to hear my thoughts and analysis live during the game at Rabble.tv. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the broadcast on TV, press the mute button, and then head on over to Rabble.tv to listen to the broadcast on your desktop, through your iOS app, and now through your mobile browser. You can join in too by posting your questions or observations in the comment sections. If you have an iPhone, install the Rabble TV app and add a comment to the broadcast message board, then listen live via the app. Or why don't you create your own broadcast and call one of your team's games? It's easy. Sign up for free today and try it out. Join me this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern for Philadelphia against Chicago on Rabble.tv. The race to win the MLS Supporters Shield and to qualify for the playoffs is heating up, so what better way to enjoy Major League Soccer than by playing one of the most unique fantasy soccer games available with Euro Fantasy League. With EuroFantasyLeague.com, don't be confused by the name. You can play MLS games for free, picking your best MLS starting 11 and subs against like-minded MLS fans such as yourself. Plus, you play in the MLS draft game just like your favorite NFL draft games. As the name suggests, you can also play a different fantasy game by selecting from 6 of the major European leagues, including the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Ligue 1, the Dutch Eredivisie, and the Portuguese Primeira Liga. So imagine picking a team that can feature the likes of Ronaldo, Aguero, Pogba, Zlatan, Rooney, and Messi, as well as other world-class footballers, with your chance to win prizes, up to $5,000 for the winner of the season prize game. This is your opportunity to show your soccer expertise by playing against other fans from around the U.S. Set up your free fantasy soccer game today at EuroFantasyLeague.com. Again, head on over to EuroFantasyLeague.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
We are back on a Friday. Phone lines ready to go. Muse ready to go. Soccer ready to go, whatever. This is a good opportunity on a Friday. We're just laid back. We're just hanging out. Just Free Kick Friday. We're doing our thing here. We're talking about soccer. We got some stories. Yeah, Mexico. You guys want to talk about Mexico's national team coaching job, whether you're a fan and you're distressed or you're not a fan and you have a little schadenfreude going on? Certainly could do that. We could also make a big deal, and I saw this yesterday and failed to actually mention it. We can make a big deal out of the fact that the New York Red Bulls went to Twitter and wished Mario Balotelli a happy birthday. Now, Mario Balotelli is at Liverpool. He's not playing. He's kind of stuck there. I read a story this morning that he's on the verge of a loyalty bonus at Liverpool. If he sticks around, he gets something 6 figures. I don't know how much that is. I mean, 6 figures could be £100,000. That's not a ton of money, but I don't think that's where it would be. I'm guessing it would be a lot. And I'm guessing Liverpool probably doesn't want to pay it. So I'm guessing they wouldn't mind getting rid of Mario Balotelli. And I've long said that MLS seems like a pretty natural place for Mario Balotelli to end up. There's lower pressure here. He can be a star. He can be the big fish in the small pond and have an opportunity to be himself without so much of the scrutiny that comes with being a black Italian footballer in Italy and in England, et cetera, et cetera. All right, let's go to the phone lines, which if I had my tabs up correctly, I can pull those up. Jonathan Tannewell joins us from Philly.com. Impromptu appearance. We didn't even schedule this, John.
I know. Your callers got me riled up yesterday.
Okay, which ones were those?
Well, the ones in Philadelphia in particular.
Okay. All right.
Complaining about the lack of atmosphere at PPL Park on Wednesday night.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. Not that many people in the region knew that the game was happening in the first place.
Okay, whose fault is
and
that, by the way?
And that falls entirely on the Union.
Okay, so the Union failed to properly promote their Open Cup semifinal.
They promoted it within their own fan base, but that's not really enough.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, put some ads on local television. It can't be that expensive.
Well, they it is in this market, and that's part of the problem.
I know.
They have had a philosophy for a long time that they sort of expect the media and the fans and the attention to come to them. That they don't really go out and get it in the way that other teams do. And Kansas, look, even the teams like Kansas City and Seattle and Portland, they go out and get it, and they go out and get it every day.
Yeah, okay. Is that, you think that's I think that may be an East Coast mentality, don't you think? An East Coast sports mentality. I'm not, I know Sikevich's long history in soccer and should know better. But isn't there this sense in sports that, hey, we're institutions here. Not that the Union have been around that long, but it kind of carries over. We're institutions here. We're part of the fabric. You're supposed to be paying attention to us. And that means we wouldn't have to go out and spend a bunch of money on marketing.
I disagree with that.
No, I'm not saying it's the right. I'm not saying it's the right attitude.
The television would disagree with it too.
Okay, I'm not saying it's the right attitude. I'm saying it might be the attitude.
Right. Well, the Eagles and Phillies and the Flyers and the 76ers, as bad as they are, they all go out and get it every day. They're on social media. They're on TV with ads. They're, on Kevin's website. They're on my website. They're in the newspapers. All that. There's that all the time. And even the Eagles, who are this powerhouse in the region, are going out and push. And you can't buy an Eagles ticket, but they're out there pushing the brand, the marketing, all that stuff, all the time, making sure that people are paying attention. And even with MLS, I look at New York City FC, for as many flaws as they have, for as much as everybody likes to complain about Yankee Stadium, they've done a tremendous job of getting their brand name out there, of marketing, of having 27,000 fans at every game. And I think about the Open Cup last year, and coincidentally, Jason, it was the week that you were off and I was hosting.
Yeah.
And I remember talking on air with Steve Holroyd and with a bunch of other folks about getting the word out about this tournament and the history of it, and specifically Philadelphia's history of it. The Union didn't do that all that much until the very last minute, when guys like me and the people at the Philly Soccer Page and Matt DeGeorge at the Delco Times and Kevin and others have been carrying the water on it a little bit, and it shouldn't have been our job to do that.
It's distressing. I mean, I'd love to know the whys of it. It's just a matter of, hey, we can't afford this right now, or we don't know if we can justify it or what.
I think it's philosophy. I think it's just and it's been that way since day one in a lot of ways. I mean, there was, for example, for a couple of years, and they finally fixed this year, nobody on their PR team was dedicated to reaching out to the Spanish language media in the region. You look around Major League Soccer in the big markets like LA and Chicago and Houston and obviously DC, which has been doing it forever, and so is New York. They make a big point of it. Only this year, after a couple of years of not doing it, the union finally got back into it. And it's not like those media outlets hadn't been here. But here's the other thing, and the reason why a lot of the fan base are so disillusioned, and I think they'll go to the final, but why they didn't go to the semifinal? They haven't won anything. They haven't won anything in their entire history. They've been to the playoffs once in 6 years, and it's looking like it's only going to be once in 6 years. And the people know that Nick Sakevich, who is the public face of the ownership group, as has been discussed on this show many times, in all of the years that he has been an executive in Major League Soccer, with the union, with the Metro Stars and the Tampa Bay Mutiny, he has won a grand total of 0 trophies. And people are getting a little cynical and a little tired of it. And you were playing the Rocky theme when Kevin came on yesterday, or your producer was.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate the use of the Rocky theme in Philadelphia sports. And this is one of the other miscalculations that the union's fan base made. The union made about their fan base. They figured, they want this team to be the gritty working class underdog blue collar thing like all the other teams are, because that's sort of this prototypical Philadelphia sports fan. They misread their fan base in a big way, because their core fan base, as is the case everywhere else in Major League Soccer, is the young urban professional, creative class kind of people. And yes, of course, they've got the soccer families and stuff like that. It's not to rule them out. But the core of the fan base is the same as it is in every other market.
Yeah.
And that group wants the team to behave like the big market, fifth biggest city, fourth biggest television market club that it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't.
No, they certainly do not. It seems to be a thing that kind of infects Philadelphia sports across the board. Sometimes is this attitude that it's a small town or smaller market attitude in a big market. You mentioned NYCFC and their marketing success. They sold that thing out last night without the upper deck being open at Yankee Stadium on a Thursday against DC United. And maybe that's just the early buzz. And I don't want to throw a ton of praise at a club who's capitalizing on a lot of new energy. I mean, that's something that certainly the union had in the beginning, John, that maybe has faded away. But I imagine if NYCFC was in a semifinal on a Wednesday night, they would be getting 20,000. One
exception.
Okay.
And it's as much as everybody likes to complain about Yankee Stadium, the location of that venue and the ease with which you can get to it is the biggest asset they have.
True.
And the union are the polar opposite, because the stadium is half an hour out of town on a good night, and the public transportation is minimal at best.
Right.
And it's another way in which they misread the market. And look, they got $50 million of free state money to build PPL Park back in the day, and it was sort of the last of the suburban stadiums that were built in Major League Soccer, because at that point in time,
mm-hmm.
the new wave hadn't really come along yet.
Mm-hmm.
But they're missing, like you can jump on the subway from Center City, Center City, Philadelphia now is the second largest downtown population in the country behind Manhattan. And you can jump on the subway from the middle of downtown, and in 20 minutes total, including the walking, be it the Phillies ballpark or the Eagles Stadium or the Flyers and Sixers Arena.
Yeah. Yeah, that's and I've had this thought before, John, and it's I don't know that it's necessarily if the union had something else on the table and chose to pass on it. And look, as you said, $50 million of state money, that's very difficult to turn down. We know how hard it is to get stadiums built. We also know that at this point in time, and maybe it was different back then, but at this point in time, the union ownership is not nearly as rich as it once was. There are teams, Philadelphia, the last of the wave, as you said, Chicago, Colorado, Dallas, Philadelphia, that have locked themselves in to bad stadium situations or less than ideal stadium situations. They have stadiums. That's great that they're playing in actual soccer venues, but they're playing so far away from their core fan base and from sort of that urban vibrancy that we talk about, and that that MLS demands so much in their expansion franchises, that we're talking 30 years before this changes, at least, right?
I think in Chicago it may come sooner than that.
Only because it'd be cheaper. Only because it would be cheaper to blow up Toyota Park for the city of Bridgeview.
Right. Yes. Right. But and here's the other part of it. And a tweeter just said this location is issue, but as far as urban stadiums go, PPL Park is one of the better spots. He's right in this way. If you have a car and you're coming from the wealthy suburbs of Montgomery County and Delaware County and Chester County, and you jump on one of the highways that's nearby, you come straight down into the parking lot. And just as importantly, as a regional venue, if you're hosting the College Cup or a U.S. national team game and you want to get people to come from New Jersey, Maryland, and D.C. and Virginia, it's perfect.
Sure, yeah. Right.
So it's great for almost everything except union games and what is increasingly the core soccer fan base.
Well, and that's the thing. The stadium is meant to be the union's home stadium. It shouldn't be, but it's great for people coming from D.C. Oh, that's wonderful, but that's not who you're targeting. Look, I think there's a lot of potential with the Philadelphia Union, clearly, John, and again, the story is so good of how they came to be and the grassroots involvement of the soccer community there. But I don't know. At this point, and again, maybe winning a trophy will do something. Maybe if they finish the job here and beat Sporting on September 30th, that will put them over some sort of hump. That will give them some sort of momentum. When's the last time? The last time a Philadelphia team won a trophy, when was that?
Phillies in 08.
Okay, so we're talking 7 years ago. And this is a city that is starved for those kinds of things. I'm not saying that soccer makes a dent the way the Phillies make a dent. Clearly they don't. But clearly it doesn't. But that can maybe be a jumping off point. And if it is, I mean, if it has the potential to be, let's really hope that Sugarman and Sakevich and everybody else involved in that team take advantage of it.
Look, I'm distanced from the team, as people know, but the fan base deserves it. You're right that it has to be taken as an opportunity for the ownership. And I'll say this: I invested a lot of effort last year within my own company in terms of trying to explain to people this is what the Open Cup is, this is why it matters, this is the story that I can write for you about the past players from the Ukrainian nationals and who are still alive and working in the Philadelphia area. And it took some effort for me to convince my own colleagues of the importance of it. But they can't just be the losing finalists. They can't turn into the New England Revolution.
No, and they
have to win the thing.
That place needs to be filled up. That place needs to be filled to the brim on September 30th. And that's on the Union now. So I'll take the opportunity. I don't know if you will, but I'll say this right now. Here's the challenge for the Philadelphia Union. Market the hell out of the thing. You've got 6 weeks, right? You've got 6 weeks to get yourself ready to put a full house in the stadium for a game that could potentially bring you a trophy, your first ever as a professional soccer franchise. No excuses, right? No, there are no excuses.
No, there are none. And here's another thing that a lot of people don't realize until they go to PPL Park. With all due respect, I've been to probably 65% of the 70% of the stadiums in MLS. PPL Park is the loudest stadium in Major League Soccer. I've had people from Portland and Seattle who've come for away games, walked out of there and said, holy cow, that atmosphere is amazing. The decibel level is off the charts. And it gets pretty damn loud when there's only 12,000 people in there, never mind 18 and a half or whatever. I think that's what the capacity is now.
Yep, it could be.
But people don't know because they don't win.
Right.
Because nobody sees it because they aren't winning, so they're not as viable a television product, and so on and so forth.
All right. Mike on Twitter is adding a couple things in. He says the ownership is responsible, but the core fans should recognize the importance of the semifinal too. So he's putting a little bit of this on the fans. And he's saying that he thinks that this year they'll sell out the final. It was close last year, but they'll get it right this year. And again, if the Union, if they have a full house for that game and they can somehow manage to beat Sporting Kansas City in a final to lift a trophy, that can be a seminal moment in modern Philadelphia soccer history, John. Let's hope it happens.
The core fan base isn't big enough to sell that stadium out on its own.
Sure, but that's when those people don't show up.
That's the fault of not building up a big enough core fan base.
Well, okay, we come back to the original problem. I got to run here, John. I appreciate the call. Jonathan Tannewald from Philly.com talking Union and the Open Cup. John, you have any parting words you want to share before we go on a Friday?
Watch Bayern Hamburg this afternoon.
Okay, what's that? Awesome. 2:30 p.m. Eastern, I think that game is, and it's on YouTube and FS2. Thanks for the call, John. Appreciate it.
Of course.
There goes Jonathan Tannewald. Good to hear. Impromptu fired up Jonathan Tannewald. That's a good thing. Let's transition from that into something very different. And that's the English Premier League with our friend Luke Moore from the world-famous Football Ramble. It's the return of Lukey Moore. It's happening right now. Why would you not want to be here? Don't go anywhere.
I got 5 broke strings on a broke guitar.
This Sunday, I'll be calling the Philadelphia Union against Chicago Fire game on Rabble.tv. I'd like to invite you to hear my thoughts and analysis live during the game at Rabble.tv. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the broadcast on TV, press the mute button, and then head on over to Rabble.tv to listen to the broadcast on your desktop, through your iOS app, and now through your mobile browser. You can join in too by posting your questions or observations in the comment sections. If you have an iPhone, install the Rabble TV app and add a comment to the broadcast message board, then listen live via the app. Or why don't you create your own broadcast and call one of your team's games? It's easy. Sign up for free today and try it out. Join me this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern for Philadelphia against Chicago on Rabble.tv. The race to win the MLS Supporters Shield and to qualify for the playoffs is heating up, so what better way to enjoy Major League Soccer than by playing one of the most unique fantasy soccer games available with Euro Fantasy League. With EuroFantasyLeague.com, don't be confused by the name. You can play MLS games for free, picking your best MLS starting 11 and subs against like-minded MLS fans such as yourself. Plus, you play in the MLS draft game just like your favorite NFL draft games. As the name suggests, you can also play a different fantasy game by selecting from 6 of the major European leagues, including the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Ligue 1, the Dutch Eredivisie, and the Portuguese Primeira Liga. So imagine picking a team that can feature the likes of Ronaldo, Aguero, Pogba, Zlatan, Rooney, and Messi, as well as other world-class footballers, with your chance to win prizes, up to $5,000 for the winner of the season prize game. This is your opportunity to show your soccer expertise by playing against other fans from around the U.S. Set up your free fantasy soccer game today at EuroFantasyLeague.com. Again, head on over to EuroFantasyLeague.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, it's a new Premier League season. It's underway. We've already played a round. We've got another round coming up. There's other things happening. Jose Mourinho's being Jose Mourinho. That means we get to talk to Luke Moore from the world-famous Football Ramble. He's a very busy man, but he's carved out some time for us, and we appreciate it. Luke, how are you?
Never too busy for you, Jason, and for all your lovely
That's
listeners. Remember that.
That's so lovely for you to say that. All right, let's hey, look. I mean, like I said, we've played around, and there were some interesting results last weekend, and we've got some big games coming up. But all everybody wants to talk about is Jose Mourinho and the doctors, and I've been ignoring it, frankly, Luke. I've been ignoring it all week, and I mentioned it today at the top of the show, only because he had a press conference and a bunch of people asked him about it. Should I care? Should this be a big deal?
I think it's up to you what you care about. Of course, I think that it's one of those things that seems to me like it's a typical Mourinho distraction tactic to get away from what was actually quite a disappointing result on the opening day. But I think for once, the old master has perhaps picked the wrong topic, and it's run and run. And we actually saw him getting a bit tetchy in a press conference today, saying to journalists assembled that if they wanted to ask him about that, they could leave, which is a little bit rich, to say the least, from Jose Mourinho. But again, he likes to do this when his team suffers a disappointing result. Takes away from them. On the Football Ramble, I'd be surprised if he'd gone into the medical staff and said, "Look, I'm going to try and make this all about you guys. Don't take it personally." But it's just run and run. It's got out of hand now. There's an interesting tactic from Mourinho with the press, because he went into that press conference today. I wasn't at the press conference, but I saw reports saying that he would told journalists there that they couldn't ask questions about it. Now, he needs to be careful, because although he's got a pretty good relationship with the UK media in this country, I mean, they like him because he provides good copy and he fills their newspapers for them and their bulletins. His relationship with the media in Spain and Italy when he was there was very poor. Mm-hmm. And although his relationship with the media here is good, it may not always be good, and he shouldn't take that for granted, because journalists don't like being told the stuff they were told today. And if the media tell him, it'll make his job a lot harder. So it really will be interesting to see how this sort of transpires over the coming weeks. Of course, if Chelsea have a good result against Man City at the weekend, I'm sure it'll be forgotten about anyway.
Yeah, so no one turns on someone quicker than the media. Certainly the established sort of old guard media that still holds major sway and is a big deal.
Oh, in England for sure.
In
definitely.
England, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he is playing a bit with fire here, and maybe he has overstepped. Maybe he has finally found a place where he's pushed a button and it's been the wrong one, because that hasn't typically been the case, at least at Chelsea. Let's go back though and talk about last weekend and whether or not, if he is just covering for a relatively poor performance by his team, that takes away from Swansea, and let's give Swansea some credit as well.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, they're a good side under Monk. They've improved. They keep improving. They've made some good signings. Andre Ayew, who's a good player, come off, hit the ground running. But Mourinho doesn't care about Swansea. He's not going to talk about them. But I mean, just in the general context of the opening day of the league, it was a good result for Swansea, and they continue to be a little bit underrated, I think. And Gary Monk seems to be a bit underrated as a manager because he's quite a quiet guy. But yeah, they'll have a good season this season, I'm sure.
Let's just talk about a couple of things off of the after last weekend, the opening weekend of the season. I'll go to Manchester United. Obviously, they have a little bit of controversy swirling around them with the De Gea situation, Luke. They didn't look very good against Spurs from what I saw. That let's not take a lot away from one match, but that certainly wasn't Manchester United taking a giant step forward.
No, they play tonight against Aston Villa away. Their record against Villa is good, I think. So they'll be looking to follow up with another win. Let's not forget, though, I mean, against Spurs, they didn't look great in parts. And Sergio Romero kept them in the game in places, but they won the game. And that's the most important thing to take from it. Spurs were typical Spurs. I mean, they played some nice stuff. They looked okay. They looked the better team in patches, but they got beaten. So, I mean, United got to come away with that from that game with a win. I think I've long been of the opinion that the opening day of the season is just to be navigated without a disaster. Mm-hmm. I mean, look what happened to Arsenal. Manchester United can get a win against a decent enough team. They'll be happy with that, and I don't think they'll care how it's come about. The De Gea thing is an interesting situation, because I sort of thought that wasn't going to happen this window. I just thought that United were holding out pretty firmly for a big fee, and Real Madrid were saying, we're not paying this fee because he's out of contract next year. We'll wait then. And I thought that would be that, but it seems to me that De Gea might actually himself, which may change things, may change the sort of landscape a little bit. I hope it doesn't get into one of these situations where we have to hear about this every single day till the transfer window closes.
Yeah.
But I fear the worst on that one.
Yeah, I think that may be the case, and I'm having trouble keeping track. Did he say he didn't want to play? Did he? I don't. Where are we with that?
I don't think that's been announced. I think Dan Howe has said that he doesn't think he's in the right mindset to play, but I don't know if that's come from him or from the player himself. The situation a week or two ago was different to what it is now. Clearly, I would suggest, and I don't have any particular insight into either club, but I would suggest that De Gea or his agent are starting to force the move, maybe, and that's why the landscape has changed.
You mentioned Arsenal. Navigating disaster. Well, that's pretty much a disaster. Losing at home to West Ham in the manner that they did. Again, the first game of the season, first match of the season, not something that's going to necessarily inform the rest of the campaign, and yet Arsenal kind of needed a little bit of the good feelings. I mean, this is another season in which they've just ticked up just so much, just a very little bit of a notch towards, well, maybe they're an actual contender, and they didn't start it very well.
No, I think that before the season started, I had Arsenal down as the team to push Chelsea the closest in the title race, and I don't necessarily think much has changed. I mean, City looked better than I thought they would, and Arsenal looked slightly worse, but it's still early days, of course. If I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be disappointed not because they lost at home to West Ham, because that's disappointing anyway, but because they won the Community Shield, and everyone was cock-a-hoop about that, and that's a bit of a nothing trophy, really, but it's a great way to start off your campaign and to go ahead and just undo all that good work and all that confidence that you would have taken for a good win over Chelsea to lose in such a fashion against West Ham was really disappointing. And I think Peter Cech made errors. Of course he did. It was a poor debut from him. But I mean the team had chances to score. They couldn't really deal with a 16-year-old boy in the middle of the park. And Payet was good for West Ham, and they couldn't really deal with him either. All of which is sort of very disappointing, given that both those players making a Premier League debut at the Emirates. So it's very disappointing all round for them. They need to bounce back against Crystal Palace. I think they probably will. But yeah, I mean, I'd be so frustrated if I was an Arsenal fan, especially after that Community Shield result.
Well, as always with Arsenal, it seems to be that they enter the season very much tying their hopes to a transfer that has yet to happen, and I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know that Benzema's coming. I don't get the sense that he is, but I have no actual knowledge. But regardless, it's sort of the distraction of, okay, this is the player that's going to put us over, and we're constantly waiting for him until the window closes.
Yeah, my problem with the Benzema transfer is more one of character, really. I mean, the biggest problem in my view that Arsenal have when they sign players is there seems to be a culture at Arsenal of not demanding the very highest standards from the players. If you look at Mourinho's Chelsea, he clearly demands the highest standards from all his players at all times. A win at all costs sort of type of mentality. I don't think Arsenal have that. And what's more, how that feeds into the Benzema deal is that I also don't think Benzema is the type of character, from what I've seen of his career so far, to do anything more than just settle into that comfortable regime at Arsenal. He's not going to grab them by the scruff of the neck and pull them on like Alexis Sanchez tries to do. No. He's not that type of character at all, from what I've seen. So I don't know. Of course, he's a world-class striker, and on his day, he's fantastic. And you don't spend as long as he has at Real Madrid without being good. But is he the right man for them? He might be the right player, but is he the right man? It's a different question, and I don't remain convinced that he is at this point. If it even happens anyway.
It's a very good point. I mean, at a place like Real Madrid, where there are bigger figures and bigger names, and certainly Ronaldo is going to overshadow everybody else, he doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it's hard at Real Madrid. Yeah. It's very hard at Real Madrid because Ronaldo is the main man there, and there's a pecking order there, and in many ways it's similar to how it is at Barcelona with Messi. But Benzema has the ability to be one of the best strikers in the world, and like I say, he spent a long time at Real Madrid anyway, and yet the jury seems to still be out about him with a lot of fans and a lot of experts, and he's never really mentioned in that sort of great bracket, is he? And I think possibly that's because of his mentality. And does his mentality suit Arsenal? I don't think it does. I think it might be a bit of a backfiring move anyway.
One of the other title contenders, certainly Manchester City, they opened up last Monday with a 3-0 win at West Brom, just destroyed West Brom, and certainly to see Yaya Toure playing that well is a good sign for them. They do have some issues, as always, but that's a strong start. And Pellegrini with his contract extension can at least go into the new campaign with some sense of stability.
Yeah, the encouraging thing for City was that they looked like they were really, really keen, really up for it. And if you look at the company's reaction when he scored and Touré's performance, I mean, these are players that on their day are still good players. I mean, Touré, when he's motivated and really up to it, is a fantastic, fantastic player. I mean, possibly no one better in the Premier League at what he does. The problem is, of course, we don't know how long he's going to be interested for. But I would say the early signs are pretty encouraging for City, because I actually thought they would struggle against West Brom. West Brom are an organised, decent team under Pulis, and I think their pre-season would have been spot on. And I expected a lot more from West Brom. But then the team selection that Pulis made, two strikers, was a mistake. Of course, that's easy for me to say now. But if he had tried to keep it tight and frustrated City early, it could have been a different story. But that said, City were imperious. They were very good, and they deserve all the credit. And people are adjusting their opinions of City already just based on that game. I mean, in the betting for the league title, they've come right in. I mean, the market has actually been quite a sort of severe reaction to it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Chelsea, of course, is a big game. A lot will rest on that. At this early stage of the season, we'll certainly see what each team is all about in their pre-season stuff. This weekend, it'll be fascinating to see what transpires. But overall, I was impressed by them. I thought they were a good team, and they put in a good performance against West Brom.
Well, if you're gonna lay some money on Manchester City to take the title, wouldn't you want to wait until Sunday and see what happens against Chelsea? I mean, that they're at, they'll be home at the Etihad, but that's still a match that will reveal a little bit more about what City has to challenge with.
The problem is, if you're thinking about backing City for the title, if you wait till after the Chelsea game, they're gonna, if they win against Chelsea, the price is gonna be even shorter. And if they get beaten,
that's right,
you might then be taking a bit more of a gamble.
There you go. I mean, if they get beaten and the odds, get a little better for not shorter, but definitely better for you on the end if they pull out the title. Okay, so just again, sort of looking at recapping the first weekend of the season, Luke, and beyond the big. I haven't touched on Liverpool. I suppose we can. They're waiting on some players to come back from injury. They've got the Raheem Sterling situation finally settled. This is, I think, the make or break year for Brendan Rodgers, and Coutinho stepping. That's what they need.
Yeah, I think the game against Stoke was a bit of a stinker. Coutinho pulled it out and got them the win. That was important for them, because the last day of last season they were absolutely hammered by Stoke. They were beating all ends up in every area of the park, and there would have been a bit of a psychological edge to that game on the first day of the season. And they've come through it, and Liverpool fans should be enthused by that, I think. Rodgers will be under pressure. If the first 2 or 3 months of the season isn't as good as people want, Rodgers will come under pressure. There's no question about that. And his biggest challenge now is to balance these players he signed again, because the turnover of players at Liverpool over the last couple of seasons has been big, and he's got to balance them. And they started poorly last season because of that. And it's essentially what did away with all their chances of all their hopes they had for the season just gone. So they need to balance it a lot more quickly. They started off well. They've got Bournemouth at home on Monday night, I think. That's certainly who they're playing next anyway, Bournemouth at home. It's a must-win game. Last season, sort of around the beginning of the season, Liverpool were beaten at home by Aston Villa, who were in a terrible state at the time. And that result's obviously not going to be, a repeat of that result is obviously not going to be acceptable to against the promoted team. So there's a bit of pressure. They've got the personnel to do it, and they started off well. Hopefully they can, from their point of view, they can take the confidence from that and sort of press on.
They roll into a Monday match against Bournemouth. Certainly, at Anfield against Bournemouth is a nice kind of soft way to continue into the season.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a fascinating game now, because Bournemouth play in a sort of expansive style, and that's how they became successful in the second tier last season to get promotion to the Premier League. And they did that at home to Villa as well. And of course, they were beaten, but they were unlucky, I think. It'll be fascinating to see if Eddie Howe, who's a young manager, who's managed at every level with Bournemouth, if he changes his style at Anfield, if he tries to contain Liverpool and tries to nick a point, or whether he just sticks to his philosophy. Because if he sticks to his philosophy and it goes wrong, and his players are outclassed, they could be beaten heavily. But then, of course, it's the age-old thing. If they keep it tight and they lose a goal early, they can't really recover from that. It's going to be a lot harder for them. So it's a real conundrum for Eddie Howe. I think he'll be spending most of the weekend up all night working out what to do.
Beyond what we've talked about already, anything stand out for him? Certainly, the Foxes 4-2 over Sunderland is a big win for them. Where else are you looking when you review this the first week?
I think Crystal Palace had a good result, and they've got to build on that against Arsenal, which will be tough. But they've made some good signings, and they look decent. So they've been good. I think Swansea did well. I really do. I think going to Stamford Bridge in the first day of the season isn't an easy thing to do. So good for them. And like I say, I think Swansea sort of go under the radar a little bit. It was a fascinating opening weekend. It really was, and all the games were pretty competitive, with the exception of possibly the West Brom game, who were outclassed. But even Sunderland, I mean, they made appalling errors at the back. I mean, the amount of defensive mistakes they made was scandalous, really, in what was essentially a winnable game for them on paper. But I mean, both their strikers scored. I mean, Abakar worked out that he had it wrong tactically quite early on, brought Fletcher on to a Catamar, I think, and they looked a little bit better with two strikers in Fletcher and Defoe, and both of them got a goal. So they're positives to take from them as well. Obviously, they played Norwich next, and they're at home, so they'll be looking to get a win there. But it's just good to have the Premier League back, Jason, isn't it?
Yeah, well, sure it is. But Luke, I wonder, again, a weekend headed into the second round. Long way to go. But is it just as you were with this league? Again, I mean, Chelsea is a favorite. Yes, they drew at home to Swansea. They should be fine. They'll get Diego Costa fully healthy, and things will get better for them. Manchester City's going to be strong. They're going to push for a title. Arsenal, Manchester United, okay. So, they're probably clearly second tier. United could improve and maybe make a run. But really, what are we talking just about, the status quo?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's only really a handful of teams that can win the league. It depends what you're looking for in terms of stories and what you're trying to get out of watching the Premier League season. I mean, most leagues in Europe, it's difficult to make an argument for many teams to win each of their respective leagues. It's just the way football is these days. We could have an upset. We could have a team falling way below expectation, or we could have a team improving greatly and flirting with a top four place like Southampton did, and to a lesser extent West Ham did last season. Yeah. But ultimately, the more things change, the more they stay the same, I think, and that's just the way football is these days. And we either choose to partake in it and enjoy it and for what it is, or we don't.
Of course, you know what you're getting when you sign up. But in terms of the title, certainly it's going to be one of the usual suspects. I don't think anybody has a doubt about that. But it's also about, okay, what's going to happen with Newcastle this year? They're going to have the same sort of drama they usually do. They're going to be close to the relegation zone and be pulled down and then maybe pull themselves back up again until they reach mid-table. West Ham, improving, a decent side. You mentioned West Brom and their organization. Certainly they'll be somebody worth watching. Southampton, as you said, last year, for a while, it was extraordinary what Southampton was doing, and they eventually settled down into a more appropriate position, I suppose, for their level. But they have a chance to build on at least that momentum in terms of enthusiasm around the club. Is there anything going to be different, beyond the typical storylines? Watford, can they stay up? Bournemouth, can they stay up? Is something like that?
Yeah, I think there's certainly an argument to be made that at least one of the promoted teams can stay up. It's very early to say, though. I mean, an interesting thing about the Premier League this season is quite a lot of teams that you've mentioned that have changed their manager. So Newcastle have changed their manager. Who was I going to say? My mind's gone completely blank. Leicester have changed their manager, of course, with Claudio Ranieri, which is a really controversial one because Leicester did well under Pearson last season. Now that was probably more of a personal decision than anything else. Mm-hmm. And of course, the big one is that West Ham have changed from Big Sam, who never really won over the fans. They was never really that popular there. But of course, with Big Sam Allardyce, you know what you're going to get. Your team are going to stay in the Premier League. And he got them up back in there and he kept them there. And now they've decided to chuck their lot on with Slaven Bilic. And that really could go either way. Now, I know they had a good result at the opening day of the season. But I've said this before, since Bilic took over there. Bilic is a fiery character. He's a real personality. He can be a difficult person to deal with. And I think if they start losing 2 or 3 games on the bounce, I'm not saying it's going to go totally wrong for them, but I'm saying that's when we'll know what's going to happen with West Ham this season, because that is when he's really going to show whether he can manage at this level or not, because his club career as a manager hasn't been fantastic. And although he's, for the way he behaved while he was at West Ham and how much he loved playing for them, he was only there for about a year and a half. And I don't think West Ham fans will necessarily stick with him as long as people are automatically assuming they will. So the way Bilic reacts to adversity at West Ham is going to be really interesting to watch.
Before I let you go, Luke, let me just get your take on the growing spending power of the Premier League. I mean, this is not new, but with the television contracts growing exponentially, it seems there's so much money here. I think this is embodied a little bit by the Xherdan Shaqiri signing by Stoke. Spending £12 million for Stoke is incredible, and spending it on a player like Xherdan Shaqiri and convincing him to go play in Stoke. I mean, that's certainly something special right there. Are we going to see the Premier League separate itself from the rest of Europe only because of that money? Is there a way? I mean, every year we talk about the Champions League and whether or not English teams are competing well enough and can make a final, et cetera, et cetera. But that's top end stuff. I'm talking about through the rest of the league. This money is going to be game changing.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the causes of this and why this is happening. This is essentially happening because the Premier League is better at marketing itself around the world than any other league. If you look at the main competitor leagues to the Premier League, you've got La Liga, you've got the Bundesliga, and you've got Serie A. Now, the Bundesliga was dominated by Bayern Munich, and they hoover up the lion's share of all the money, so it's not really a level playing field. Now, I understand, of course, the Premier League isn't really a level playing field in real terms, but it is seen as being more competitive, at least, than Germany. It's the same with Spain. You've got Real Madrid and Barcelona. They completely dominate. They always have. There's a TV deal there, which I think is changing soon. It may have even changed recently. But ultimately, traditionally, Real Madrid and Barcelona dominate that league. So it's not as interesting. They have other problems as well with finances and wages and strikes and stuff like that. So it's not as effective at marketing itself outside of Barcelona and Real Madrid. Now with Serie A had a really competitive, highly marketable, fascinating product, if you want to use that word to describe football, which I don't really, but you understand what I mean.
Yep.
But they were, of course, been completely beset, held back by corruption, problems with administration. And so the cash cow, if you like, they had in the 90s, but they were attracting all these players. When, let's not forget, I mean, at that point, the Premier League was just essentially like MLS. It was just attracting big European players at the end of their careers, with people like Bergkamp and Zola. But the Serie A had that model, and they completely let slip by with problems with corruption like Calciopoli and stuff like that. And so there was no other league that could compete with the Premier League for those reasons. The Premier League, for all its faults, is exceptional at marketing itself. It's exceptional at playing very fast-paced, highly watchable football. Mm-hmm. And that also means that they get much better TV deals, which then means players, and not only players, but agents, are then going to be highly receptive to their clients moving to the league. So then you see players like Rondon going to wherever he's gone from, I think, and a highly rated forward player who lots of clubs wanted. Someone like Shaqiri, who could have gone. I mean, okay, his career stalled slightly. Yeah. But FC Par, who was a great player, he's a great player at Bayern Munich for a time. He's an exciting player. He's played at the World Cup. This is a guy who will get people to watch football. He's elected to go to Stoke. Why is that? Possibly because Mark Hughes has got a project there. Possibly because he's being backed. Possibly because it's quite a stable club. But you couldn't make an argument that it's a fashionable club. And you couldn't make an argument that it's really highly regarded around Europe. But what could you make an argument for? Well, it's got a lot of money. He's going to be paying a lot of wages to be there. And he's gone there after a number of other European players who've won the Champions League have also gone there. So all this stuff adds up to the fact that the Premier League is a huge, huge draw for a lot of these players. And not only are they good quality European players, but in someone like Shaqiri's case, they're not even that old. I mean, this is a guy who really, if he applies himself, has got the best years of his career ahead of him, and he's at Stoke City. So that's exciting for people who like to watch English football, and it's exciting for Premier League fans. Does it unbalance the continent? Probably. But I mean, I'm not really sure it's a fair question to ask anyway, because every country and every league is going to do the best they can for their particular teams. That's just the way it is. The Premier League is just better at it at the moment, but it's a cyclical thing, and at some point, I'm sure it will change.
We'll see if it does. It's Luke Moore from the world-famous Football Ramble. We are into the new Premier League season. I hope we get a chance to talk to Luke many more times throughout the campaign. Luke, I appreciate it. Brilliant stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on a Friday. Have a lovely weekend. Enjoy your football.
Yeah, and you enjoy it yourself. And thanks. Cheers.
That's an opportunity for us to go ahead and wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning on a Friday. Seems like a good place. We stretched it out a bit. Now we're going to close it down. Got a big Sirius XM FC show coming up in just a little bit. Make sure that you go check that out if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, then I don't know what the heck you're doing. You get so much stuff. It's not even XMFC, Sirius XMFC. It's all this other a wonderful content, and I'm there. It's fun. All right, we've had a good show. John Tannenwald called in unbidden. Luke Moore makes his glorious return. Premier League coming up. I'm looking at the schedule. Manchester City and Chelsea on Sunday looks fantastic. We've got lots of MLS to look forward to. We didn't really get a chance to delve fully into what happened last night in New York City between NYCFC and DC United. But let me just say that I am all in on the Poku party. Kwadwo Poku is my new favorite player. I'm a little fickle. I bounce from player to player. I'm that kind of guy, but I'm a big fan. Kwadwo Poku, he's my favorite player, and that's where we'll leave it. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. Make sure you go to backheel.com/store. Buy yourself a mug. They're pretty. We got great t-shirts over there. We need a Poku party t-shirt. Can we please have a Poku? Please, Trevor, please. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week. Later.
Did my invitations disappear?